Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about 10 plus players that you want to not just walk, you want to run to the waiver wire to pick up prior to week number 5 of the 2024 fantasy football season. And this week, the waiver wire is incredibly deep. It is like the sack that Santa keeps all the gifts in, right? It's an infinite bag. There are a lot of options off of the waiver wire that I really like this week, and the waiver wire might be a large priority for you this week as there are 4 teams on bye: the Lions, the Titans, the Eagles, and the Chargers. But before we get on into my waiver wire pickups for week number 5, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. While you are down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure to leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. So without further ado, let's get into my waiver wire pickups for week number 5 of the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with my first waiver wire ad of the week, and that is Dontayvion Wicks, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers, going up against the LA Rams in LA on Sunday. 9.5% rostered on ESPN, 2.4% on NFL, and 14% on Yahoo. Now, when it comes to Dontayvion Wicks, he was a guy that I talked about all summer. If you were doing best ball drafts, I really liked Dontayvion Wicks because he was just one injury away from being incredibly involved in this offense. And we saw last season that Jordan Love really did like to target Dontayvion Wicks. And while I wasn't super big on him in your normal redraft league, because again, you needed an injury for him to truly succeed, that injury ended up happening. Christian Watson is out for the foreseeable future. He has a high ankle sprain and is expected to miss multiple weeks and could easily go on the IR. This led to Dontayvion Wicks getting his snaps increased heavily. Dobbs played the most amount of snaps at 86%, Jaden Riley-Reed 78%, and Wicks 76%. In that game, Dontayvion Wicks was the wide receiver 3 in PPR. Now, this video is being recorded prior to both of the Monday Night Football games, so Dontayvion Wicks could definitely get knocked down from being a top 3, top 5 wide receiver in PPR, but nevertheless, the stats were still impressive. 5 receptions on 13 targets for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns up against the Minnesota Vikings. I get the first half of that game was an absolute belt to ass scenario by the Minnesota Vikings, but the Packers started to get their sea legs under them. I think that Jordan Love is going to play a lot better going forward. I love this spot for him up against the Rams this week, and until Christian Watson returns, I think Dontayvion Wicks is a very interesting start. At number 2, we got Justin Fields, quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, going up against the Dallas Cowboys at home in Pittsburgh this week. 24% rostered on ESPN, 22.9% on NFL, and 32% on Yahoo. Justin Fields is currently the quarterback 1 on the week, and he went up against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers did end up suffering their first loss of the season, but Justin Fields had his best game of the season. 22 completions on 34 attempts with a 64.7% completion percentage for 312 passing yards and a touchdown with 10 rushes for 55 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he had 3 total touchdowns in that game as the quarterback 1. He has now scored 18 or more points in back-to-back weeks, and there is absolutely zero reason for Justin Fields to lose his job at this point for anything outside of poor play for multiple games, right? Earlier on in the season, when Fields wasn't playing the best through the first 2 weeks and they weren't really heavily utilizing his ability, okay, I would have gotten, maybe Justin Fields has one down game and, Mr. Unlimited's healthy and they pull the plug and they throw Russell Wilson in. But right now, based upon how Fields has looked, I think it's going to take multiple poor games in a row out of Justin Fields or an injury for him to lose his job. I think Justin Fields is a very safe bet weekly due to his rushing upside, with also having huge upside any given week, like being a top 5 quarterback due to that rushing upside. Now, he's also thrown more than 30 times in back-to-back games, which definitely has helped, and I am hoping that continues because if it does, it will lead to him being a lot more consistent. At number 3, we have the PPR merchant himself, Wan'Dale Robinson of the New York Football Giants, going up against the Seahawks in Seattle this week. 27.1% rostered on ESPN, 14% on NFL, and 26% on Yahoo. Now, he is strictly a PPR or half PPR ad. Why is that? Because Wan'Dale Robinson isn't scoring touchdowns. He is just sucking in targets like his name was Angela White, and that is leading to him putting up a high point total. He was the wide receiver 16 in PPR up against the Cowboys because the motherfucker had 14 targets, 11 receptions for 71 yards, and has now had back-to-back games with 8 or more targets. Malik Neighbors is definitely a large question mark for this week, so if Neighbors doesn't play, that could increase the upside of Wan'Dale slightly. Even if Neighbors is good to go and suit up, I do really believe that Wan'Dale is basically a lock at this point to get 8 or more targets. I get that the upside is definitely limited by the fact that it's very unlikely that he scores a touchdown, but if you're seeing that much volume game in and game out in half PPR or full PPR, you are going to see great success. Shout out Borat out of Wan'Dale Robinson. Next up, we got Rico Dowdle. You might just get hit with the Rico. Meek Millie, running back of the Dallas Cowboys, going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. 43.3% rostered on ESPN, 18.3% on NFL, and 49% on Yahoo. Now, I was talking up Rico Dowdle all summer. I was giving him the Gawk 9,000 special, talking about how he could easily overtake Ezekiel Elliott, and it appears that that has happened. Now, we've been talking about Rico Dowdle not only all summer long, but I think I've talked about him in every single waiver wire video up to this point as a guy that if he is available, you want him on your bench. Now, did he go absolutely hog wild up against the Giants on Thursday Night Football in MetLife? No, but he was the running back, 11 rushes for 46 yards, 1 catch on 1 target for 15 yards and a touchdown. Dowdle played 45% of the snaps, whereas Zeke only played in 18%. Now, the fullback, Lepke, has been getting a bunch of snaps, 52%, but I don't think that really impacts Rico Dowdle's workload game in and game out. This matchup up against the Pittsburgh Steelers is definitely far from ideal, but if you do have a bunch of running backs on bye, because there are a couple of teams on bye this week, I definitely think Rico Dowdle could be started. Again, I'm not going to sit here and bang the drum for him, give him the Hawk special because he's going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh, but I think it is officially time where the power has been transferred from Zeke to Rico Dowdle on this team. And if Zeke's only playing like 15 to 20% of snaps weekly, then Rico Dowdle could end up being a league winner. At number 5, we got Chase Brown, running back of the Cincinnati Bengals, going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I fully understand that in most competent leagues, Chase Brown is going to be rostered. Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Baltimore Ravens, 54.6% roster on ESPN, 46.4% on NFL, 61% on Yahoo. Now, while he is going to be widely owned, he's not going to be available in a majority of your guys' leagues. If you are in a league that is at least somewhat competitive, it's very unlikely that you could pick him up, but not everyone plays in those leagues. Not everyone's playing with the sharpest knives in the cupboard. People may have cut Chase Brown due to his performance early on in the season and the fact that the Cincinnati Bengals offense as a whole has been relatively limp dick compared to what we thought they would be. Last week, though, Chase Brown went up against the Carolina Panthers and he beat them down relentlessly. 15 carries for 80 yards in Carolina, 5.3 yards per carry, 2 receptions on 2 targets for 12 yards. Now, I want to make this very, very clear. The reason why I have Rico ranked ahead of Chase Brown is because I believe that Rico Dowdle has a stranglehold over the Cowboys backfield, and if the Cowboys offense starts really hitting their stride, they start to really gel together, then I believe that the Dallas Cowboys could have one of the best offenses in the NFL, and being the lead back on that team could elevate you to fantasy football superstardom, whereas Chase Brown, as of right now, is still the clear number 2 back. Now, in positive matchups, Chase Brown could get his toes wet and score a touchdown. He could have a very solid game, and Chase Brown did look good last week up against the Panthers. He even found the end zone twice in that game. Zach Moss also scored once. My belief still is that Zach Moss is the running back to have in Cincinnati. Now, does that mean that Zach Moss is going to outscore Chase Brown every single week? Of fucking course not, but I still would rather have Zach Moss over Chase Brown. Moss played 60% of the snaps last week, Brown just 40%, and all season long, Moss has played more snaps. But, and this is a big but, shout out to Savannah Bond, that was the most amount of snaps that Brown has played all season and the least amount of snaps that Moss has played all season. So I still believe that it is Moss's backfield, but things might be changing very, very soon. At number 6, we got Trey Sermon, the good word spreader himself of the Indianapolis Colts running back going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville. 0.8% roster on ESPN, 0.1 on NFL, 0.8 on Yahoo. Very likely that you're going to be able to mosey on over to the waiver wire and pick him up. Now, JT, Jonathan Taylor, has an ankle sprain. Shane Steichen today said there is no plans to place him on IR as of right now, but I do assume that this is a multiple week absence, and in that case you are going to be able to plug and play Sermon. Obviously, is Trey Sermon as good as Jonathan Taylor? Fuck no, baby. Can Trey Sermon hold Jonathan Taylor's jockstrap? I don't think so. But he's still a fine start with how many injuries there are across the NFL. If you're a Jonathan Taylor owner, you need Sermon. Tyler Goodson will see a few snaps, but nothing to really take away from Sermon. That was the case last week as well. Now up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Sermon was disappointing. 5 rushes for 8 yards, but that was against the Steelers. I think he's going to be able to perform much better up against the Jaguars. Again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Trey Sermon is the second coming of JT, Bo Jackson, LaDainian Tomlinson or something, but without Jonathan Taylor, Trey Sermon should be fine enough to start. Next up, we got Kareem Hunt, running back of the Kansas City Chiefs, going up against the Saints. 21.4% rostered on ESPN for Kareem, 17.8% on NFL, and 36% on Yahoo. Now, personally, me, as well as a majority of people, probably thought that Kareem Hunt was going to get slowly ramped up, right? They were going to use the just the tip technique, ease him in, and get him more and more snaps as the season goes along. Without Pacheco, there is a clear, big, huge hole in this backfield, and Steele and P. Ryan looked fine in week number 3. So I thought, you know what? They're just going to ease Kareem in. And they did the exact opposite. They went balls deep against the Chargers, running back 23 in that game in LA, 14 rushes for 69 yards. Very nice. I like 4.9 yards per carry, 2 receptions on 3 targets for 16 yards. Hunt played 45% of the snaps, P. Ryan just 40%, and Steele, they need to stop the steal because Steele's value is going into the fucking dumpster. Hunt had 14 carries with 3 targets. P. Ryan had 5 carries and a touchdown. Steele had just 2 touches, 2 carries, and 3 targets. So I'm not going to sit here just yet and completely write off Carson Steele. But I think if I had Hunt and Steele on my team, I'm playing Hunt at this point. Again, could things change from week to week? Could the offense as a whole look way different now without Rashee Rice? Of course it will. We shall see how things go as the season moves along and progresses. But as of right now, Kareem Hunt is the running back to own in Kansas City. Next up, we got Tucker Kraft Mac and Cheese, tight end of the Green Bay Packers, going up against the LA Rams at home. Actually, it's not at home. It's in LA. 4.5% roster on ESPN, 1.6 on NFL, 4% on Yahoo. Now, stop me if I sound like a broken record, but the tight end position in the National Football League, in fantasy football right now, is at an all-time low. This year felt like the year where there's so much value at tight end. The 3rd, the 4th, the 5th round, you could just fire those shots, and you're going to land a guy that has so much upside. The Dalton Kincaid, I guess Dalton Kincaid's been fine, but the Kyle Pitts, and you draft him, and you've ended up largely disappointed. Mark Andrews. And I've also said every single week that while I am picking these tight ends up, I wouldn't bet my life that they're going to perform like they did the week prior. We tend to invest off of 1 week of production and then are awestruck when they shit the bed. Now, I'm not saying that Tucker Kraft is going to shit the bed up against an LA Rams defense that I don't think is very good this week, but what I'm going to say is I think it is very ignorant, it is very stupid to just assume that Tucker Kraft is going to see the volume that he saw last week up against the Minnesota Vikings in a game where they got ravaged without the use of lube. 6 receptions on 9 targets for 53 yards and a touchdown. He is the clear tight end 1 over Musgrave. That has been the case all season. And without Christian Watson, that should give an uptick in targets for Kraft. But again, I want to be very honest. I want to be very clear when I say this. Don't blow your fab wad on Tucker Kraft, because if he ends up not being like a top 12 tight end, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Am I fine picking Tucker Kraft up? Of course, but don't fucking unload the clip Tony Montana style here for Tucker Kraft, in my opinion. Now, maybe I'll end up looking foolish, like with your pants on the ground and the hat turned sideways type deal, but I like Tucker Kraft. I really do. I think he's talented, but there are a lot of cooks in the Green Bay kitchen. Before we move on into the final waiver wire ads of the week, as we go through all the way from players 9 all the way through 16, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, if you're new and sign up with code Notorious, you'll be able to claim your free pick, which is tonight, Tyreek Hill higher than half of a total yard. You match that with one of the other players playing tonight on Monday Night Football from any team outside of the Dolphins, and if both of those picks hit, you receive 3 times your entry fee. If you do put in more than 2 picks, the payout will obviously be higher. If you're watching this on Tuesday or Wednesday and, you know, Tyreek has already played, you will actually receive a different free pick, which will be very similar to Tyreek, higher than half of a total yard. Plus, if you use promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description, you'll receive a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So make sure you guys check that out. Promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description. So player numero 9 here is going to be Xavier, somebody touch my Legette, wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers, going up against the Chicago Bears in Chi-Town. 25% roster on ESPN, 4.3 on NFL, 14% on Yahoo. Now, Xavier Legette looked amazing up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Wide receiver 12, 6 receptions on 10 targets for 66 yards and a tug, 2 rushes for 10 yards. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I was the highest person, I was the highest in the room, like that Travis Scott song on Xavier Legette coming into the NFL draft based upon where he was drafted. I didn't love it. But now with Adam Thielen on IR and with Legette being the clear number 2 target behind Deontay Johnson, Legette also played the most snaps at wide receiver this week, and the fact that Andy Dalton revived this Carolina Panthers offense, I think Legette, look, top 12 weekly would be fucking insane to say, right? The matchup up against the Bears isn't the best, but could Legette be a reliable flex option? Yes, he definitely could, as long as Andy Dalton's able to at least, you know, keep playing like the fire that he's lit underneath this team recently. I don't even think he needs to play amazing for Legette to be fine, so definitely worthy of a waiver wire ad. Next up, we move to number 10, Zach Ertz, tight end of the Commanders. Left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders? And I got a question for you guys. Let me know down below in the comments. I know you probably have other questions. If you made it this far, do you guys think Jaden Daniels could win the MVP as a rookie? Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like 4 weeks into the season, we know exactly what's going to happen. He could get hurt, knock on wood. Josh Allen could become a Superman or some shit like that, right? Someone could definitely win MVP over him. But I wonder, like, if he maintains this level of production through the rest of the season, would the NFL give him the MVP as a rookie? I don't know. And that's kind of shocking because if you look at some interesting statistics, which is guys that were able to put up this high of a completion percentage through the first beginning of the season, they have won MVP every single time. Those guys are obviously like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, though. Zach Ertz, not going to be widely available. 54.9% on ESPN, 22% roster on NFL, 30% on Yahoo. And he didn't have that great of a game up against the Cardinals. I thought the game would have been better. I also thought the Arizona Cardinals would put up more of a fight. 3 receptions on 3 targets for 22 yards. He typically gets like 4 or 5 targets a game, but the team does look great, and he should find the end zone eventually. And the team is yet to really ramp up Sanat enough to where that would scare me off of Zach Ertz. The matchup here isn't the most ideal, but again, when tight end is an absolute fucking wasteland, we basically can close your eyes, go to the waiver wire, pick someone up and play them, and they might be better than some guy that your league mate drafted in the 3rd or 4th round. things are getting rough. At number 11, we got Tutu Atwell, wide receiver of the LA Rams, going up against the Green Bay Packers. 6.9% rostered on ESPN, 1.7 on NFL, 8% on Yahoo. Wide receiver 31 last week up against the Bears in Chicago. 4 receptions on 6 targets for 82 yards, over 175 yards over the last 2 games. Now, Whittington did outsnap him, and Whittington was a guy that I picked a lot in my underdog best ball drafts in the summer because Sean McVay was literally fucking using Whittington's balls like a fushigi, and Whittington had a really big preseason game, so I drafted him in a bunch of best ball drafts. I don't really have any Tutu Atwell, but I also didn't expect the DEFCON terrible scenario, break glass in case of emergency here, where there's no Puka and Cooper Kupp for at least the next couple of weeks. So Whittington, 97%. Atwell, 90% of snaps up against the Bears. Robinson, 85%. Tyler Johnson, 16%. So if you have Robinson, I would just drop him for Atwell. If you have Tyler Johnson, I would drop him for Atwell. I think Atwell is the guy to have in LA. The team's upside is heavily limited by the fact that, they don't have Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua, but that does increase the amount of targets that Tutu is going to see weekly. Once those guys come back, you're going to have to throw Tutu into the garbage. But as of right now, in deeper leagues, you could definitely play him. Next up, we got the Tank Bigsby, running back of the Jaguars, going up against the Colts. 6.4% roster on ESPN, 1.5% on NFL, and 12% on Yahoo. Running back 29 up against the Texans in PPR, 7 carries for 90 yards, and he's averaging 8.2 yards per carry on the season. Now, do I think that Bigsby is going to leapfrog over Bigsby, or Bigsby is going to leapfrog over ETN, fucking posterize him Giannis Antetokounmpo style? No, I honestly don't think that's going to happen, because while ETN hasn't looked the best, I still believe that he has a pretty solid stranglehold over the backfield. But this is NFL football. This is fantasy football. People get hurt, knock on wood. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm rooting for ETN to get hurt, because that is far from the situation. I don't root for anyone to get hurt. But, and this is a big but, shout out to Violet Myers, if he was to get hurt, then I think Bigsby would be a weekly top 24, top 18 option at running back. This week, I wouldn't really want to start him, though. Next up, we got Taysom Hill, tight end of the Saints, going up against the Chiefs in Kansas City. 27.2% roster on ESPN, 12.2% on NFL, 39% on Yahoo. We talked about the tight end position with Zach Ertz. It is absolutely brutal. It is terrible. So that leads to guys like Taysom Hill potentially sneaking into your lineup. Now, Taysom Hill is the definition of boom or bust. Taysom Hill is either going to go out there and have that big game, right? Be a top 5 tight end, go crazy, score multiple touchdowns, or he's going to go out there, do diddly squat. Foster Moreau gets more touches, Juwan Johnson gets more touches, and that kind of just leaves Taysom Hill out of the picture. But there's also that same outcome where he plays just 20% of the snaps like last week up against the Falcons in Atlanta. And while he doesn't catch the ball once, he has 6 rushes for 24 yards and 2 touchdowns. Am I going to sit here and proclaim that that's going to happen every single week? Of course not. But Taysom Hill is the only tight end that in any given game could throw a pass, catch a pass, and run the ball into the end zone, right? He could get the triple. Right? Get a UAV, call that thing in. So Taysom Hill, again, not going to sit here, rank him super highly every single week, but with the tight end position being so fucking confusing, and with you, like I said, you could just put a blindfold on and pick someone and just hope they score some fantasy points, Taysom Hill can do exactly that. Next up, we move to number 14, Jalen Polk, wide receiver of the Pats, going up against my Dolphins at home in Foxborough. 15.7% rostered on ESPN, 1.1% on NFL, 9% on Yahoo. Now, is Jalen Polk an ad where you could start him this week up against the Dolphins? Probably not, right? He was the wide receiver 55 up against the 49ers in Santa Clara. 7 targets with 3 receptions for 30 yards. The reason why you add Jalen Polk is because the upside will be unlocked once Drake May takes over. With Jacoby Brissett under center, the offense is inept. The offense does not look good. Now, I get Don't roll Drake May out there up against the 49ers, right? Where Fred Warner could pick you off and run directly to the cribbo, right? Don't do that. That's scary. Don't go up against one of the Bosas who could fucking pick you up and basically just hit you with the tombstone WWE style, right? I get that. But eventually, they're going to have to let Drake May play. Let Drake May cook. And while I'm not going to sit here and say, Drake May is the best quarterback, going to be the best quarterback in the NFL, or be fucking delusional like that, but if Drake May's play is just halfway decent, and Jalen Polk is the number one option here, which I believe will be the case, then Jalen Polk could elevate into being a flex-worthy play. So you're going to add Jalen Polk now, because once he has that true breakout game, you're going to have to pay a much heftier price. Next up, we move to Josh Downs, wide receiver of the Indianapolis Colts, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville. Lower than 10% owned in ESPN and NFL, 8.8 in ESPN, NFL 2.6, Yahoo 20%. Now, if Anthony Richardson misses this week, I will be all over Josh Downs. Pause, right? I would be ecstatic to play Josh Downs because while I don't think Joe Flacco is the answer for the Colts, right? While I don't think that Joe Flacco in his old age, the guy that can barely fucking move in the pocket, he's lost his arm strength, he looks old. He can still throw the ball though, he's wheeling and dealing out there, he looks good, he looks fine. That's great for Josh Downs. Richardson comes back though, that flushes Downs down the toilet. Wide receiver 8 in PPR versus the Steelers. A tough defense. Cool Joe Flacco knows his way around the Steelers defense, though, I guess. 8 receptions on 9 targets for 82 yards and a touchdown with only 62% of the snaps. And I think the snap share continues to grow as he gets more and more healthy and more integrated into this offense following his injury that had him missing the first 2 weeks of the season. Downs did lead the team in targets, tied with Michael Pittman Jr. But again, if Anthony Richardson's back in the lineup, even up against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, I think Josh Downs is too much of a risk to play. And the final guy here, this is just a YOLO deep league pickup, and that is JuJu Corvette Smith-Schuster, wide receiver of the Chiefs, going up against the Saints, rostered in less than 1% of leagues on ESPN, NFL, and Yahoo. This is a straight-up dart throw. The shot from the moon, the shot not from half court, not from full court, from 3 fucking courts over. It is a basically impossible shot. But with no Hollywood, with no Rice for the rest of the season, JuJu could end up being the number 1 target. Now, am I saying that that is guaranteed? Would I bet my life on that? Fuck no, baby. It'll probably just lead to Kelsey getting way more targets. But Worthy doesn't profile as a guy that's sucking in targets like Kirby with 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 targets a game, right? He's not going to fit that Rashee Rice role. And while I understand that JuJu Smith-Schuster is not good, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like he's amazing. Patrick Mahomes can make him good. Now, they also have Justin Watson, so this is not the easiest situation to dissect. If you're in a deeper league, if you're down bad at wide receiver, and you ought to just take a shot, because you'll know very quickly in this game against the Saints, is JuJu going to be involved or not? Is JuJu going to become the guy? Because if he's not, you can just drop him like it's hot instantly. But if he does become that guy, then that could be a huge value. Because again, if he's that guy in Kansas City and Mahomes starts to look better, then this is a guy that a lot of people, especially just name value, will be willing to blow a lot of fab on, and you'll be able to get him early. So thank you guys again for watching today's video. Thank you to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Again, promo code Notorious, you get that free pick for tonight. Tyreek Hill higher than half a total yard. If you're watching this after Monday, you'll receive a different free pick. Promo code Notorious, click on the link in the video description, plus a first-time deposit offer for up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. We'll be back in the morning with running back start sit for week 5, wide receiver start sit later on in the day. I love you guys all so much. Thank you guys for all of the support as of recently. Check out the defense to stream video that's going to be on your screen right now. Love you guys. Have a great one. As always, good boy.